I believe we may have found a winner for the legacy auto company most likely to go bankrupt by 2030. I'm going to back this up with some pretty alarming statistics at the end of this video. So stay around and I'll show you the Altman Z-Score and the numbers for why Mitsubishi is in huge trouble. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Electric Viking. My name is Sam Evans. Great to have you here on the channel. I spent, I don't know, hours and hours researching this video, hours looking at Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi to get a complete picture of what's actually going on with this so-called auto group. It's not really a group. I mean, there's a little bit of incest going on in terms of co-ownership of different companies. Not literal incest, of course, but you get my point, right? Nissan owns a significant percentage of Mitsubishi, which happened after Mitsubishi got in trouble. They did some dodgy things and Nissan came in and sort of saved them and bought out about 40% of the company. Personally, I think that was a bad move from Nissan. I don't know why they did that. Renault, Nissan's alliance partner, said, no, thank you. Nissan, you can have that. We don't want anything to do with those guys. But that said, that isn't entirely true because Carlos Ghosn at the time actually decided to bring Mitsubishi into the Renault Nissan alliance. But remember, this alliance only means that they share parts and it's basically a way that Renault can just sell Mitsubishi stuff. That was why that plan was made. Recently, Carlos Ghosn said he thinks Mitsubishi is screwed. He believes that they will go bankrupt. And sure, there may be a little bit of conflict here. However, Mitsubishi, remember, had no part in the scandal with Ghosn. So they played no part in the whole, to be honest, it was a setup in setting him up in order to take the fall for Nissan not wanting to be merged with Renault. Anyway, moving on. If there is one brand in the United States currently more pitiable than Mitsubishi, personally, I don't know it. Maybe Fiat could be, but I mean, obviously, they're not really a mainstream legacy auto company in the way that Mitsubishi is known as. Now, one of the key problems for Mitsubishi, they've had nothing cool since the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 10 Final Edition, which departed in 2016. I mean, that was a pretty old car by 2016, even though it was a cool car. Since then, they had nothing. Now, Mitsubishi then got our hopes up by saying they were going to bring out an Eclipse, which would be a sporty vehicle, but then they turned it into a crossover. Now, Mitsubishi's own ex-chairman, Carlos Ghosn, wanted international fugitive and escape artist, pretty impressive escape, I've got to say, essentially said Mitsubishi is screwed in a recent interview. Now, the ex-CEO sat down with the Drive's Kyle Tromcha for a chat recently, and he didn't mince words when asked if he thought Mitsubishi is in serious financial trouble. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When Nissan and Mitsubishi struck an alliance in 2016, Osamu Masuko, Mitsubishi's then chairman and CEO, apparently approached Ghosn and he asked if there was anything they could do together. I say, yeah, sure, Ghosn recalled to the Drive, but you're going to have to accept a lot of changes, he told Masuko, and you're going to have to accept to remain as CEO because you're going to do the changes and I'm going to watch. This is the way it happened, he said. Ghosn called Mitsubishi the typical zombie Japanese company, alive from outside, but dead from inside. If we have a think about this, have a look at Mitsubishi's financial results in the financial year ending 2019. Well, they don't end the financial year in 2019. They end it at the end of March every year. But let's just ignore that because that confuses the situation. Let's just call that 2019. Well, in that year, Mitsubishi made a loss of about 500 million. The following year, they made a loss of 1.35 billion. Maybe that doesn't sound so bad. If you're a big company, it wouldn't. The key issue here is, though, that in that year, Nissan only sold 800,000 cars worldwide. How can you make a loss of 1.35 billion US dollars selling only 800,000 cars? I don't know how that's possible. Getting back to Ghosn, he said with a little push, he called it oxygen that we put inside, Mitsubishi made a remarkable recovery. Now think back to 2017. the profit came back very quickly in 2017 and 2018, and he was correct. In the US at least, Mitsubishi reported that 2017 was its 5th consecutive year of sales growth and that 2018 resulted in its best annual sales since 2007. Best December since 2006. And it was reported that in 2018, Mitsubishi was able to increase its profit substantially since Ghosn stepped in, going from a 1.9 billion net loss in 2016 to a 925 million profit in 2017. But it would appear as though as soon as he left the company, they went back downhill again. He says, immediately after me exiting and obviously other people exiting, it went back even to probably worse than it was. The numbers speak for themselves, Ghosn said. Not only do they speak for themselves, but also you trust management when management spends time looking forward, not backward. I remember in 1999, I forced myself to say that I shouldn't criticize what happened before. He went on, I should only be looking onward in order to make sure everyone looking to Nissan in 2000, 2001, 2002, and not looking to what they've done in the past. Well, today we have management who is still talking about what happened in the past and they're not looking forward. You have people who are unable to vocalize a simple vision and strategy that would not make you yawn, he continued. What's missing is a strategy that is believable where you say, okay, they're going to have a chance to survive in this very competitive market. Ghosn has a point. Mitsubishi doesn't really have much of a strategy. They did announce one recently as part of their partnership with Renault and Nissan. But remember, right now, Nissan has no EVs anywhere in the world. It plans on building one in China, but it's not even going to make that car itself. Its JV partner is going to make that car. GAC will basically slap the badges of Mitsubishi onto one of its Aion electric vehicles so that Mitsubishi can have a token electric car in China. So, Ghosn asked rhetorically, how are you going to move forward if you're looking backward? Now, if you look at the numbers, each year, approximately 10 to 15% of Mitsubishi's electric cars, approximately 10 to 15% of Mitsubishi's cars sold worldwide are sold in China. However, seeing as Mitsubishi is not making any significant effort to make EVs, in fact, making no effort at all in China, it's clearly losing significant market share in China. If we have a look at Mitsubishi's sales in China, over the past 6 months, it has lost market share every single month compared to its sales last year in China. And that trend appears to be accelerating. For example, in December of 2020, Mitsubishi sold 10,981 vehicles in China. The previous year, December of 2019, Mitsubishi sold 13,257 in China. The previous year, December, Mitsubishi sold 15,000. This year, 7,000. What about November? The same exact results. 7,000 in November of this year versus 9,000 in November of the previous year. The previous year before that, it was 12,000. What about all the way back in 2015? 23,000 in November of that year. You can see a significant sales decline in China. You can see similar numbers in many areas around the world, including Europe. For example, in 2021, Mitsubishi sold 66,000 vehicles in China. This is the world's largest auto market, and they sold 66,000 vehicles. Back in 2018, they sold 141,000. In other words, they've lost more than half of their market share in the space of only a few years. What about in the United States? Well, back in 2002, Mitsubishi sold 350,000 cars in the US. In 2021, it sold 102,000. You can see that Mitsubishi's car sales in the US and China are both on life support right now. And this is reflected in Mitsubishi's current share price, which has crashed over the last few years. In a space of only 3 years, the share price has dwindled by a factor of 3x. It's now worth 1/3 of what it was worth only 3 years ago. Now, one key reason for this could be the fact that it sold only 824,000 vehicles worldwide in 2020, or at least fiscal year 2020-21. it ended in April of 2021. That's how they do it in Japan for some reason. Now, all of this wouldn't be so bad if Mitsubishi had actually planned for the future and they had an electric car portfolio. However, if you actually have a look at the plans of the alliance, Mitsubishi, Nissan, and Renault, they plan on having 200 gigawatt hours of battery capacity in 2030 and going all electric by 2030. However, currently, the Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Renault alliance sells around 8 million or 7 to 8 million cars, around about 8 million cars per year. Last year it was 8 million. Before that, it was 10 million. So this means that if Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Renault do as they plan by 2030 and only sell electric cars, then the 200 gigawatt hours of batteries that they have planned, by the way, they don't have any of this production right now. They have a very small amount of this. They're only about 10% of that right now. But if they do somehow manage to get to 200 gigawatt hours, that would mean they'd only have enough production for 4 million cars. And that is assuming each car only comes with a 50 kilowatt hour battery. In other words, their production between the three automakers has to halve in order for them to hit this optimistic target of having 200 gigawatt hours of batteries in 2030, which they only have less than 10% of right now. Now, there's one possible thing that could potentially save Mitsubishi, and that is the fact that Nissan owns a percentage of the company. Now, I think Nissan could also go bankrupt as well, but it's likely they'll be bailed out by the Japanese government. I think the Japanese government probably think they're too big to fail. Now, how did this come to be? Well, in 2016, Nissan uncovered evidence that Mitsubishi's fuel economy testing numbers were erroneous and had been erroneous since the start of the venture, affecting 625,000 cars produced by the company. The result of the fuel economy scandal was that Nissan acquired a controlling interest in Mitsubishi as detailed under membership in Nissan Renault Mitsubishi Alliance. As a result, Nissan began the acquisition of a 34% stake in Mitsubishi Motors, with the aim of making Nissan the largest and controlling shareholder of Mitsubishi and turning Mitsubishi Motors into a member of the Renault-Nissan alliance. But at the same time, what this did was saddled Nissan with debt and a car company which clearly was not prepared for the future. I mean, at least at that period in time, Nissan was actually selling an electric car en masse, not en masse, but at a pretty significant quantity, the Nissan Leaf. Mitsubishi, on the other hand, was selling minuscule quantities of the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, which was a very, very subpar electric car. You can buy an electric car like the i-MiEV right now in China for about $6,000 with similar specifications. But the i-MiEV cost in many countries around the world around $50,000 for a very tiny little K car sized vehicle. So why do I think Mitsubishi will go bankrupt? Well, of course, I have pointed out that Nissan could bail them out. They're a controlling shareholder of the company. On the other hand, they may just choose to get rid of them or sell them off to a Chinese car company. That's possible. However, according to the Altman Z-Score and the Petrovsky F-score, Nissan's probability of going bankrupt over the next few years is 50%. Now, for stocks, the probability of bankruptcy is the normalized value of Z-score. For funds and exchange-traded funds, it is derived from a multi-factor model developed by MacroAxis. Now, the score is actually used to predict the probability of a firm or a fund experiencing financial distress within the next 24 months. Unlike Z-score, probability of bankruptcy is a value between 0 and 100, indicating the firm's actual probability it will be financially distressed in the next 2 fiscal years. And this refers to the normalized Z-score. Now, based on the normalized Z-score, Mitsubishi has a 50% probability of bankruptcy within the next 24 months. Now, that's not to say it will happen. It's just saying there's a 50% likelihood. Now, the Altman Z-Score is one of the simplest fundamental models to determine how likely your company is to fail. The module uses available fundamental data of a given equity to approximate the Altman Z-Score. Now, the Altman Z-Score is determined by evaluating 5 fundamental price points available from the company's current public disclosure documents. And it was developed by Professor Edward Altman, who developed it in the late 1960s at New York University. And since he's modified this, but it has a 90% chance of success, 90% over the last 40 years. It's been very, very useful tool for analysts to look at companies in distress. So the 5 factors are the following. The first factor is working capital or total assets. The score is 1.2 for Mitsubishi. The second factor is retained earnings or total assets. The score for Mitsubishi is 1.4. The third factor is EBITDA and total assets. Mitsubishi's score is 3.3. However, I think that's highly questionable considering that total assets, many of them are going to have to be written off over the next decade because they're pretty much all ICE assets set up to build gas-powered cars. And once this disruption completely happens by 2030, the majority of those assets will be written off. Sure, they may still own factories, but much of the production lines will be written off completely. Now, the fourth factor, where Mitsubishi scores a very poor 0.8, is market value of equity and total liabilities. Their total liabilities are pretty shocking in comparison to their actual equity. Fifth factor is revenue and total assets, and they score a 0.99. This comes to a total score of 1.59. So that's Mitsubishi's Altman Z-Score, 1.59. Now, don't worry. There's a number of other legacy auto companies that score pretty poorly in this range as well. And I made a video about that. I'll put a link in the description below to that video that I made, assessing the Altman Z-Scores of the majority of the legacy auto companies globally. So as you can see from the data I've just shared with you, there's a pretty damn good chance that Mitsubishi are going to disappear. I think the most probable likelihood will be one of two things. Mitsubishi will declare bankruptcy and be bought out by a Chinese company who will then use the brand. Very common for Chinese companies to do that, or it's certainly more common lately anyway. Or the other possibility is Nissan will actually end up buying the company after they get bailed out themselves by the Japanese government. Either or, the future doesn't look very good for Mitsubishi. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This is just my opinion. Well, not just my opinion. As you can see, I have done a fair bit of research into this, but certainly things don't look good. Have a great day. I'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.